Hi, I'm Al Sutton from Acme Audio and Rust Belt Studios, and we're here at Rust Belt Studios today with Vintage King, kind of going over a few of the things that we do here at my studio when I make a record and I mic things up. And right now we're going to look at this drum kit here, and this is sort of a go-to drum miking that I start with on most of my sessions when I'm making a record. And what we have here is what I call and many people call the Glenn Johns miking, where you use the overhead and the side. We do an equal distance miking. I always use a drumstick, and actually, this is an old trick that we've done back in the White Room Studios days. Mike Nira and I are quite familiar with this little method here. So I just set this up. I use two sticks in one hand. Look at the overhead, look at the side, try to get them in equal distance, and then you pan these two mics left and right. You get a very in-phase stereo image that's just beautiful sounding. It's a really good representation of what your drum kit sounds like. Lately, I've been using these Masonic M2 passive ribbons. I find them quite detailed in the high end. They are just phenomenal sounding mics. I've, in the past, normally used Shep's 221s or AKG C12As, which are great mics as well. These I'm kind of enjoying a lot right now. Their detail on the high end is just phenomenal, and the imaging is quite wonderful, as ribbons can be. And that's kind of my go-to overside drum miking. On the snare, standard 57, then a Gefell M300 on this little handy X clip thing that is a phenomenal little trick for putting two mics on one situation for snare mostly. The M300, it's a great mic. For the condenser side, it's a little cheaper than a KM84, and it kind of handles a lot more sound pressure. Kick drum mic is a D25 AKG, phenomenal mic. Everybody kind of knows that. And then this particular position here, which some people call the worst mic or the knee mic, I'm using a vintage Neumann Gefell UM57 large diaphragm tube mic. It's a phenomenal mic for pretty much everything. And in this position here, you could play with, the polar patterns, omni, cardioid, figure eight, for whatever your situation is for the song you're working with. You'll probably want to mess with that. And then I'll compress it later in the mix and stuff just to get different effects out of it. And for a room mic, out in my hallway, I just put a Masonic stereo ribbon mic. We'll show you that in a minute. And I just keep that in an XY position, Blumlin actually, and I just put that up to 2 tracks, and that gives me my distance that I need to give my drum set sort of a larger room sound. All right, let's take a look at these tracks here. We have all our breakouts: the kick, the snare, the bottom snare mic, the left-right Glenn Johns, the worst mic, and the stereo room mic. So I'm going to play these back, and we're going to listen to these with and without some of the processing that we do. So it's pretty simple. Kick, snare drum, bottom snare, the kit itself, the left-right kit, the worst mic, and then our room mics. So what this system allows me to do is it allows me to have plenty of options when I mix later for whatever kind of situation I want to create later on sonically. So for instance, if I want to just dry everything up, I can just use my kick and snare and my 2 Masonic overhead and side mics, and I get a pretty nice tight drum sound. If I want to get a little more interesting flavor, I bring the bottom snare in, and you can kind of hear that without it, with it. And then the worst mic, I call it the worst mic, I can bring that in. And that's a whole separate flavor altogether. Without it, with it. And then the room sounds for going bigger. Without it. With it. So I can show you now a few of the different processing things we have going on. So let me take some of these back. Let's start with the overside mics. With these, I just tend to put a little compression on with the Acme Audio 500 series Opticoms. You can hear without it, and it's just very subtle. Let's whip them in, whip them out. These are solo, now in the track. Without, in. I try not to compress them too much. I just try to get a little bit more attack on the snare, a little bit of length on the cymbal sound. So it's just a very subtle hit. The bottom snare, though, on the other hand, I go for a really aggressive tone. I use a Pi compressor. I got a vintage Pi in the rack. I scoop a lot of the high mids out, add some low and really high end, and I, kind of hit that hard. That's without it. That's with it. And this, I just go for more of an effect. And it's the same with the worst mic. That's without it. I use an Opticom XLA3 on that, and I kind of crush it a little harder to give it a lot of energy, to just make it make the drum sound a little more aggressive. It's more of an effect track without the compression, with it. In the track, without, with. And the rooms are obviously used when needed. When I use the Q2 Compex ADR on that, no compression. Compression. In the mix, compressed, no compression. One thing you want to be very conscious of when you're doing this kind of miking, or any miking for that matter, on drums, is just mess with your phase on everything, because phase is obviously the most important thing. Listen to your overhead and your bottom snare mic in and out of phase, your top and bottom snare in and out of phase together, and really see how they sound. It's the most important part of it. For instance, the worst mic, you hear when I flip it out of phase, I have it 180 out right now because it seems to be where it wants to be. If I stick it in phase, you can hear the low end of the kick drum go away. When I put it back out, it kind of sits in there and sounds better. It's important for the close proximity mics to really play with the phase on everything before you actually start recording, and just find what you really like and what really is proper.